The autumn breeze carried the sound of children's laughter across Pine Grove Elementary's playground. Tom Miller watched his third-grade students chase each other around the jungle gym, a small smile playing on his weathered face. 15 years in the military hadn't prepared him for the joyful chaos of teaching, but he wouldn't have it any other way. Young Andy bounced a basketball nearby, his brown hair ruffled by the wind. "Watch this, Mr. Miller," he called out, attempting to dribble between his legs. The ball rolled away instead, making both teacher and student laugh. That's when Tom noticed the silence. The birds had stopped singing. The leaves had stopped rustling. Even the distant traffic noise had vanished, as if someone had pressed a giant mute button on the world. His combat instincts kicked in before his conscious mind could process what was wrong. "Everyone inside now," he barked, using his drill sergeant voice. Some kids jumped at his tone, but they recognized the seriousness in their teacher's face. Then the air rippled. It started small, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but it grew, spreading across the sky like rings in a pond. Tom's phone died in his pocket. The school's security cameras drooped, powerless. Even the electronic door locks clicked open, then fell silent. The ship appeared as if it had always been there, hanging impossibly low over the playground. Its surface shifted colors like oil on water, stretching nearly the length of a football field. No rockets, no engines. It simply was. "Run!" Tom shouted, but it was too late. Beams of pale green light shot down from the vessel, each one finding a child with terrifying precision. Little bodies began rising into the air, suspended in the ethereal glow. Screams filled the playground, both from the floating children and those still on the ground. Tom sprinted toward Andy, who hung suspended 3 feet off the ground. The boy's eyes were wide with terror as he reached out toward his teacher. Tom jumped, his fingers brushing Andy's shoe before the beam yanked the child higher. No. Tom leaped again, higher, this leap fueled by desperate determination. This time he caught Andy's ankle, but the beam's pull was relentless. Tom's feet left the ground as he held on, his military-trained muscles straining against the alien force. "Don't let go, Mr. Miller," Andy cried, tears floating upward from his face. "Please don't let go." Other teachers had run outside, but they could only watch helplessly as more children were lifted toward the massive ship. Some parents who had been nearby for pickup time threw themselves at the beams, trying to grab their kids, but the light simply passed through adult bodies as if they weren't there. Tom felt his grip slipping. The rough fabric of Andy's sock stretched between his fingers. "Hold on, buddy," he shouted, but he knew it was futile. The force pulling upward was too strong, too precise, too inhuman. With a final brutal yank, Andy's sock slipped through Tom's grasp. The boy screamed as he was pulled higher, joining dozens of other children floating toward dark openings in the ship's hull. Tom crashed to the ground, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. He rolled to his feet immediately, military training taking over, searching for anything he could use as a weapon. But there was nothing. No way to fight, no way to stop what was happening. In less than 2 minutes, it was over. The ship shimmered once, rippling like a mirage, then vanished. The sounds of the world crashed back in. Car alarms, screaming parents, crying children who had somehow been spared, and the wail of approaching emergency vehicles. Tom stood in the middle of the playground, his hands still clenched into useless fists. 47 children had been taken from Pine Grove Elementary alone. His students, his kids. The taste of failure filled his mouth like bitter metal. But underneath the shock and grief, something else began to burn. Rage. Pure, focused, military-grade rage. These aliens, whoever they were, had just made the biggest mistake in their species' history. They hadn't just taken children. They'd taken human children. And if there was one absolute truth in the universe, it was this: you never, ever come between humans and their young. The war had begun. The aliens just didn't know it yet. The world exploded into chaos within hours. Reports flooded in from every continent. Paris, Tokyo, Moscow, Cairo, Sydney, all hit simultaneously. The pattern was always the same: ships appearing out of nowhere, power systems failing, and children vanishing into the sky. In Washington, D.C., Admiral Kate Wells stared at the massive screen showing attack locations. Her own daughter had been taken from a soccer field in Virginia. But she couldn't think about that now. She had a job to do. "Total number?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her chest. "Over 10,000 children worldwide, Mom," her aide reported. Military responses were ineffective. Our weapons either missed completely or passed right through their ships. The room fell silent as the president walked in. His face was gray with exhaustion and worry. "Admiral Wells, tell me you have something." "Mr. President, I do. But you won't like it." She pressed a button, and the screen changed to show a series of images. These were taken 3 months ago by a secret space telescope. "We've had contact before today." Gasps filled the room. The images showed similar ships docked at what looked like a massive space station. Alien figures moved between them, clearly engaged in some sort of trade. "Why weren't we informed?" someone demanded. "Because we were trying to prevent panic," the president admitted. "We thought we had time to prepare. We were wrong." Admiral Wells stepped forward. "The aliens call themselves the Collective. They're not one species, but many. They see younger civilizations as resources to be harvested. But they made a critical mistake. They underestimated us." She switched to another image, this one showing a captured alien scout ship. 2 hours ago, a group of parents with military backgrounds managed to bring down one of their smaller vessels in Montana. The pilot survived long enough to reveal something important. "Our children are being taken to processing facilities throughout their territory." The president's fists clenched. "Processing facilities?" "Yes, sir. And I have a plan." Wells turned to face the room. "While Earth officially sues for peace, I want to assemble a covert strike team. Parents with special forces training, intelligence backgrounds, or relevant scientific expertise. People with nothing left to lose." "Because they took their kids," the president nodded slowly. "Exactly. The Collective thinks we're just another primitive species they can raid at will. They don't understand what they've done." Wells's eyes hardened. "They don't know that human parents will tear apart the galaxy to save their children." Security footage began playing on a side screen, videos from the attacks. In every one, parents could be seen fighting desperately to save their children. Teachers forming human chains, mothers climbing light beams, fathers throwing themselves at invisible ships. The Collective has rules, protocols, expectations of how primitive species should behave. Wells continued. "We're going to break every single one of them." She brought up a new image, a complex diagram of alien biology. "They also have weaknesses. Dr. James Harris, whose son was taken from Pine Grove Elementary, has already started analyzing their physical structure. We're not as primitive as they think." The president studied the room, then nodded firmly. "Do it. Whatever you need. But Admiral," he paused, his voice growing cold, "make them regret ever hearing the word Earth." Wells turned back to the screen, watching as new attack reports continued to appear. The Collective thought they had won. They thought humanity would break, would submit, would accept their losses like so many species before them. They were wrong. Somewhere up there, thousands of human children were scared and alone. But not for long, because their parents were coming. And they were bringing with them humanity's oldest, deepest, most primal command: protect the young. The Collective was about to learn why you never, ever take a human child. The hunt was about to begin. The captured alien scout ship held more secrets than the Collective could have imagined. Deep inside a hidden military base in Montana, Dr. James Harris studied the strange symbols on its control panel, his fingers trembling slightly as he worked. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept properly since Andy was taken. "Their biggest mistake," he explained to Admiral Wells and Tom Miller, who stood nearby, was thinking we couldn't understand their technology. But they forgot something important about humans. We learn fast when we're angry. Tom touched the ship's strange metal skin. Can it lead us to the children? Better. James pulled up a holographic map. It's already showing us where they are. The collective uses these processing facilities. Red dots appeared, scattered across nearby star systems. They're so confident, they don't even hide their locations. Admiral Wells leaned forward. How many children at each facility? Thousands. James's voice cracked. Not just humans. Other species too. They've been doing this for centuries. Meanwhile, in another part of the base, the first wave of what the media called the peace delegation prepared for their mission. On the surface, they were diplomats going to meet with the collective's leaders. In reality, each one was a special forces operator who had lost a child in the raids. Remember, their instructor said, they'll scan for obvious weapons, but they won't look for these. She held up what appeared to be a simple pen. Tracking devices disguised as diplomatic gifts. They're so proud of their technology, they won't expect something so simple. Back in the lab, Tom studied combat footage from the raids. Look here, he pointed to a screen. Their ships have a pattern. They always attack the same way because it's always worked before. Nobody's ever fought back effectively. Until now. Wells nodded. What else? Their shields only block modern weapons, Tom continued. But simpler things, like physical objects, can get through if thrown hard enough. They never planned for someone to just throw a rock at them. James looked up from his work. That matches what I'm seeing in their biology. They're advanced, but they're soft. No natural predators for thousands of years. Poor healing abilities, sensitive to changes in pressure, almost like they forgot about physical combat entirely. The next morning, Earth launched its first true counterstrike. The peace delegation departed in a simple transport ship, broadcasting messages of surrender and cooperation. The collective's leaders, certain of their victory, welcomed them to their nearest diplomatic station. They never suspected that each gift, each handshake, each polite bow was part of a carefully planned infiltration. Microscopic tracking devices spread through their station like invisible dust. Each diplomatic meeting revealed more about their defenses, their routines, their weaknesses. And in the shadows of space, Earth's first stealth ships, modeled after submarines, crept closer to the processing facilities. Their crews were all parents, all volunteers, all burning with the same cold fury that had driven humans to cross oceans and climb mountains to protect their young. Signal from the delegation. An operator reported to Admiral Wells. First facility's full layout uploaded. Security patterns logged. We have everything we need. Wells studied the data, then pressed a button to connect with all teams. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. But most importantly, she paused, her voice hard as steel. Remember what they took from us. In his lab, James touched a photo of Andy. We're coming, son, he whispered. In the Lid stealth ship, Tom checked his gear one last time. The collective was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our weapons. It was the lengths we would go to protect our children. The hunt had begun, and the collective's comfortable, ordered universe was about to shatter. The processing facility's night cycle was quiet. Guards walked their usual routes, bored and confident in their superior technology. Nobody had ever dared attack a collective facility before. Nobody had ever been able to find them, let alone reach them. They didn't notice the dark shapes moving through the shadows. They didn't see the stealth ships hidden behind the facility's own waste heat signature. They never realized that their greatest defense, their advanced scanning technology, was exactly what made them blind to humanity's older, simpler methods of warfare. Inside the lead ship, Tom checked his old-style compass. The collective's anti-technology fields couldn't affect it. Teams in position, he whispered into his mechanical radio. These simple devices, using principles hundreds of years old, worked perfectly while the aliens' quantum communications remained unaware of their presence. Remember, Admiral Wells's voice crackled through their earpieces. This isn't just about our children. We show the galaxy today that humanity won't tolerate this anymore. For any species, the first sign that something was wrong came when 3 guards simply collapsed. Tiny darts, tipped with a sedative Dr. Harris had designed specifically for collective biology, had struck them silently. By the time the alarms finally sounded, human strike teams were already inside. Tom's team moved through the corridors like ghosts. Their simple tools, lockpicks instead of electronic bypasses, analog weapons instead of energy guns, confused the facility's automated defenses. The collective had prepared for every advanced attack possible, but not for humans using centuries-old warfare techniques. They found the first holding area quickly. Hundreds of children from different species huddled in glowing cells. Among them were dozens of human kids, including some Tom recognized from his school. "Andy," he called softly. "Andy, are you here?" A small alien child pointed toward another section of the facility. It didn't speak English, but Tom understood the gesture. He nodded his thanks, then turned to his team. "Start getting them out. All of them, human and alien alike." The facility's commanders finally realized they were under attack. They activated their most powerful defenses: energy shields, robotic sentries, neural disruptors. But these weapons, designed to stop advanced armies, did nothing against humans using rubber bullets, mirror shields, and simple rope and pulley systems. "How are they doing this?" one commander screamed as another section fell. "They're primitives. They shouldn't even be able to find us." "That's your mistake," Tom said, stepping into the control room. "You think technology equals advancement. You forgot about something much more powerful: a parent's love for their children." Across the facility, similar scenes played out. Human teams, using a mixture of modern equipment and ancient tactics, systematically took control. When collective reinforcements arrived, they found their weapons useless against Earth's stealth ships, which used water and simple metals to deflect energy weapons. 6 hours after it began, the battle was over. 200 children of various species were freed, loaded onto rescue ships, and ready for evacuation. The facility's staff were contained, their arrogance replaced by confusion and fear. Admiral Wells's voice came through their comms again. "First strike successful. Similar attacks have just begun at 6 other facilities. The collective is in chaos. They never expected this, never expected us to fight back, let alone win." Tom looked at the rescued children, human and alien alike. They were scared but alive. Safe, yet he hadn't found Andy. "Where are the others?" he demanded of a captured commander. "You don't understand," the alien said, its voice shaking. "This was just a small facility. There are thousands more. You can't possibly." Tom grabbed the alien's collar. "Watch us. You took our children. There is nowhere in this galaxy you can hide from us now." The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning, and humanity was done playing by the collective's rules. News of humanity's successful raid spread through the collective's territory like wildfire. Species that had lived in fear for centuries watched in amazement as human strike teams continued to hit facility after facility, freeing children of all races. Dr. James Harris stood in his lab, staring at the holographic data he'd uncovered from the captured facility's computers. His hand shook with rage as he reported to Admiral Wells and the Emergency Council. "It's worse than we thought," he said, his voice tight with anger. "They're not just taking children for labor or resources. They're selling them as exotic pets to wealthy collective members." The room erupted in fury. Tom, who had just returned from another raid, slammed his fist into a wall. "Pets," he growled. "Yes." James pulled up more data. "But this discovery gives us an advantage. I've isolated a weakness in their biology. All high-ranking collective members share a similar genetic structure due to their selective breeding. I can create a virus that will only affect them, leaking their victims and lower-ranking members unharmed. Admiral Wells leaned forward, a targeted weapon. More of a threat, James explained. Something to show them we can hurt them specifically if they don't return our children. They'd never faced this kind of targeted danger before. Meanwhile, across collective space, something unexpected was happening. Lower-ranking members of various species began secretly helping human forces. They provided maps, security codes, and transport schedules. Some even sabotaged collective defenses just before human raids. On a distant trading world, a collective manager watched in disbelief as their supposedly unbeatable security system failed completely. Human ships appeared from nowhere, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their approach, a trick learned from Earth's sea creatures. How are they doing this? The manager demanded. A junior officer, from a species that had lost many children to the collective, smiled secretly. Perhaps, they said carefully, the collective isn't as superior as we thought. Back on Earth, Tom led a briefing for new strike team members. The wall behind him showed successful raid locations, growing in number every day. They're starting to crack, he told the room full of determined parents. Their perfect system relied on everyone being too afraid to fight back. But now other species are watching us, learning from us, helping us. A screen lit up with new intelligence from their allies. Tom pointed to a massive structure floating in space. This is their main trading hub. They thought their technology made them invincible, but we've shown the galaxy that determination beats arrogance every time. In her command center, Admiral Wells received another report. 3 more collective facilities had fallen, not to human forces, but to rebellions from within. The slaves and servants they'd looked down on for centuries were rising up, inspired by humanity's example. They never understood, she told her staff. They thought stealing children made them powerful. Instead, it made them targets, and not just from us anymore. James burst into the room, his eyes wide with excitement. We found him. We found Andy. Tom, who had been reviewing maps nearby, spun around. Where? Their capital world. James projected an image of an enormous city planet, but he's not in a regular facility. He's being kept as a pet by one of their highest leaders. The room fell silent. The collective's capital was the most heavily defended location in their territory. No enemy had ever even gotten close to it. Tom checked his old compass, the one that had guided him through so many successful raids. When do we leave? Wells smiled grimly. First, we show them our new virus. Let them know exactly what's coming for them if they don't surrender. Then, she looked at the assembled warriors, parents all. We finish this. The collective was about to learn that they hadn't just awakened humanity's wrath. They'd inspired a galaxy to rise up against them. The collective's capital world hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in gleaming cities and orbital defense platforms. No enemy fleet had ever breached its defenses. No hostile force had ever landed on its surface. Its leaders felt completely safe behind their wall of advanced technology. They were wrong. Look at them, Tom said from the bridge of Earth's lead stealth ship. All those fancy defenses, and they still haven't spotted us. The human fleet had been hiding in the system's asteroid belt for 3 days, using technology reversed engineered from captured ships, combined with old Earth mining techniques. Dr. James Harris worked at a console nearby, monitoring his virus. The delivery systems are ready, he reported. One command, and every high-ranking collective member on that planet will start feeling very, very sick. Admiral Wells's voice came through their simple radio system. Remember the plan. We give them one chance to surrender all children. If they refuse, she didn't need to finish the sentence. The first sign that something was wrong came when the collective's orbital defense grid suddenly shut down. Their former slaves, inspired by humanity's example, had finally turned against them. Security codes were changed, weapons were disabled, and communication systems went dark. The human fleet dropped its camouflage and advanced, but instead of high-tech energy weapons, they launched simple projectiles, Chunks of metal and rock accelerated to incredible speeds. The collective's shields, designed to stop energy beams, were useless against these basic weapons. Message from their High Council, an operator announced. They're laughing at us. They say our primitive weapons can't hurt them. Tom smiled grimly. Send the video. On every screen in the capital, images began playing. Hundreds of rescued children, countless freed slaves, and dozens of captured facilities. But most importantly, they showed the virus's effects on test subjects. High-ranking collective members turning blue, gasping for air. The laughter stopped. This is humanity's one and only warning. Admiral Wells's voice boomed across all frequencies. Return every child you've taken, human and non-human alike. Step down from power. End this corrupt trade in innocent lives. Or we release the virus, and your entire leadership dies slowly. In his private chamber, the High Leader of the collective watched the approaching fleet with disbelief. On his lap sat a small human child with familiar brown hair. Andy. Impossible, he muttered. They're primitives. They shouldn't be able to. The building shook as another barrage of simple metal projectiles struck the city's shields. Alarms blared as former slaves and servants began rising up throughout the capital. The High Leader's own guards stepped away from him, throwing down their weapons. Sir, one said, we have children too. We won't help you anymore. On the lead ship, James's console lit up. They're running. The leadership is evacuating to their secret bunkers. Not all of them, Tom said, looking at a thermal scan of the High Leader's palace. I see him, and there's a small human heat signature with him. It's Andy. It has to be. Admiral Wells gave the order. All teams go. Remember your training. Remember what we learned in all those raids. But most importantly, her voice hardened, remember what they did to earn this day. The human forces landed in the capital city, moving with practiced efficiency. They faced no resistance. The regular citizens and lower-ranking members simply stepped aside, many of them cheering as their former masters fled. Tom led his strike team toward the palace, his old compass swinging from his neck. After months of fighting, after countless raids and rescues, he was finally closing in on his target. Hold on, Andy, he whispered. We're coming to take you home. All of you. And the collective will never hurt another child again. The High Leader of the collective backed away as Tom's strike team breached his private chambers. His guards were gone. His defenses had failed, and his mighty empire was crumbling around him. Yet he still held Andy close, using the boy as a shield. Stay back, he commanded, his voice shaking. Don't you understand? We brought order to the galaxy. We controlled the wild species. You stole children, Tom said quietly, stepping forward. Behind him, Dr. James Harris and Admiral Wells moved into position. You took them from their families, sold them as pets, made their parents suffer. Andy's eyes lit up with hope. Mr. Miller. Dad. The High Leader's grip tightened. Your species was nothing. Primitive savages on a backward world. How dare you challenge us? How dare you upset the natural order? Natural order. Admiral Wells laughed coldly. Look around you. Your empire is falling. Your own people turned against you, all because you never understood one simple truth. You never hurt a human child. James stepped forward, holding a small device. That blue tinge on your skin, the shortness of breath you're feeling. The virus is already working. You have maybe an hour before organ failure begins. Unless what? The High Leader wheezed. Unless you surrender. Order all your facilities to release their captives. Step down from power. Face justice for what you've done. James held up the antidote. Your choice. A High Leader looked around wildly, seeing his perfect world dissolving. Through the windows, he could see human ships landing across the capital. Former slaves were celebrating in the streets. Other collective leaders were being led away in chains. His grip on Andy loosened slightly. The boy saw his chance and bit down hard on the alien's hand, just like Tom had taught his students about dealing with attackers. The High Leader yelped in pain and stumbled backward. Tom moved faster than anyone thought possible. In one smooth motion, he pulled Andy to safety while James and Wells secured the alien leader. "Dad." Andy ran to James, who swept him up in a tight hug. "I knew you'd come," Andy said, crying. "I kept telling the others you'd find us." Tom smiled through his own tears. "We'll always find you. All of you." Across the capital world, similar scenes played out as more children were rescued. The collective's leadership, facing the virus's effects and uprising from their own people, surrendered completely. Every facility was opened. Every child was freed. Every slave was released. 1 week later, Tom stood in his classroom again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Children from a dozen alien species sat alongside his human students. Former collective worlds had asked Earth to help protect and educate their young ones, trusting the species that had fought so hard to save children that weren't even their own. "Today's lesson," he said, looking at the diverse faces before him, "is about standing up to bullies, about fighting for what's right, no matter how powerful your enemy seems." Andy raised his hand. "Like how humans fought the collective." "Exactly." Tom touched the old compass that still hung around his neck. "But remember, we didn't win just because we were strong. We won because we showed the galaxy a better way. Because we proved that protecting children isn't just a human thing, it's the right thing." On his desk sat a small plaque, delivered that morning. Earth had been named the guardian of the new Galactic Child Protection Treaty. The document's first line read, "Never again will any child of any species be taken from their family." Outside, the playground echoed with laughter, human children playing alongside young aliens whose parents had sought refuge on Earth. The collective's mighty empire had fallen not to advanced weapons or superior technology, but to something much more powerful, the simple, unshakable love of parents for their children. In the end, that was humanity's greatest weapon. Not our ability to fight, but our capacity to care. Not our technology, but our heart. Not our strength, but our love. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. You don't mess with human children. Ever.